Greetings, my name is Christopher McClung, and I will be your host for this presentation based on Resurrecting the Champ, which is a story based on a lie. This is for interpersonal communication at California Baptist University. A writer, like a boxer, must stand alone. Having your work published, like fighting in a ring, puts your talent on display, and there is nowhere to hide. This statement is said by Eric Kernan Jr., who was one of the star characters of this film. And this film stars Josh Hartnett and Samuel L. Jackson. Josh Hartnett plays journalist Eric Kernan Jr. Samuel Jackson plays a homeless man who was a former boxer who goes by the name The Champ. So, in short, this film is based on struggling journalist Eric Kernan. He writes mediocre sports journalism. He goes and does mediocre sports events, and he's looking to make a big break in the sports world. In doing so, he finds a homeless man on the street after leaving a bar one night, and that homeless man is getting beat up by a couple of college kids. He helps him out, picks him up, ends up talking to him, and he claims to be Battling Bob Satterfield. Ecstatic about the idea of writing a story about a boxer who was a famed name and now becomes a homeless person, he decides to begin finding Satterfield and interviewing him, and eventually writes this article. And the article is published in the Denver Times Magazine and ends up being a national magazine. He is immediately, after writing the article, he's immediately shot into the fame spotlight. And one of the most notable things he does is he becomes a TV personality on Showtime Boxing. Eventually after that, it comes out that the son of Satterfield, Bob Satterfield Jr., shows up at the magazine and is absolutely irate that the story is published. And the reason why he's irate is because his father passed away, and the homeless man who was claiming to be Bob Satterfield was in fact not, and instead was a man known as Tommy Kincaid. Kincaid was an average boxer, nothing special, nothing great about him. However, one day somebody said, you look a lot like Battling Bob Satterfield. And then so from that point on, he said, okay, I'll start boxing as this guy, because he loved the fame that he was getting himself. And he did so all the way until his death. Eric Kernan Jr. obviously must apologize for his mistake. He is publicly humiliated. The story of his false reporting is broadcast just as nationally as his magazine was, and he's ashamed. And he did so because, again, he wanted to make a name for himself, but above all, both men wanted to be good fathers and wanted their sons to look up to them. So, in a nutshell, that's the story, and we're going to look at a couple key terms here. Verbal communication. There's a lot of verbal communication that happens in this film. Kernan speaks to his boss, who's named Metz. His Metz doesn't think anything special about him, so he wants his approval. He speaks a lot to his wife Joyce and his son Teddy, and obviously he speaks to Champ, the homeless man, a lot. They talk about feelings, they talk about disappointments, they talk about moments they shared, and again, above all, is that picture there in the bottom left. They talk about wanting to be good men and have their sons, be proud of who they are. There is also a lot of nonverbal communication in the film. One of the most notable nonverbal communication instances is Eric Kernan Jr. finds an old VHS tape of Satterfield boxing and puts in the videotape in a video store for Champ to watch. And what he doesn't know is that particular tape he found was in fact him boxing Satterfield. It was a boxing match between Satterfield and Kincaid. At the time, he didn't know that he was Kincaid and not Satterfield, but still, it brings a lot of emotion up for Kincaid, and he's able to see himself boxing, ends up welling up with tears, doesn't say much, but you kind of get the idea that he's very proud of what he saw. Social comparison theory. Both of these characters, both Kernan and Kincaid, want nothing more than to be socially accepted in both of their jobs. Kincaid wants to be a fantastic journalist. He wants his boss's approval. He wants the approval of the nation. He wants to be known as a famed journalist, just like his father was. Even more so than that, his wife is a good journalist at the same paper, and he is comparing himself to her, and she is far more successful in journalism than he is. Additionally, Kincaid wants to be a famed boxer. He wants matches. He wants people to yell and scream his name when he walks into a ring. So he does so at the fact of changing his persona to be Bob Satterfield, and with the instant name that he has of people knowing Satterfield is a good boxer, he then finds that when he does change his name and he pretends to be Satterfield, he gets those same things that he was looking for. So both of them were looking to be famous at what they do. They compare themselves socially, and others in the paper result, and so it ends up being a false story, and it comes at a great cost to both their reputation. The next term is perception. The largest example of perception is Kernan's perception of Satterfield. As a seasoned journalist, he should have known to check the facts. He should have known he should dig deep for facts. There was stuff out there available. Satterfield's old hit cut man and trainer, all that stuff he could have spoken with. He could have found Satterfield's obituary and didn't even do that. So the perception that he had was so great for Kernan that the perception he had of Kincaid was so strong that he was willing to overlook obvious facts to get the story that he wanted. Interpreting. Although the characters themselves have multiple examples of interpreting, I as a viewer notice most of all an interpretation of Kernan and Kincaid having two very similar stories. Both men wanted to be prolific in their careers. Both men were willing to lie for the approval of others and for their sons. And both men make the discovery that lying was not the easiest way to be accepted by those who were around them. Let's look at the next one. Cultural influence. For this story, the cultural influence is greatly an influence on the decisions that both of them make in their lives. Due to both of them wanting public acceptance and public prominence, they make decisions that are consciously deceitful and end up embarrassing themselves in the end. Kincaid lives his entire life as Satterfield and hides who he is, and he is ashamed of being his true self. Kernan also willingly is deceitful to his son. Again, he claims to know all these celebrities that he really doesn't. He says he tells his son he knows Muhammad Ali. He tells his son he knows a bunch of football players, and he doesn't. Both men want to be prominent in their career, and they are influenced by the popularity of men that allures to their fame and prominence. Emotions. Emotions play an obviously significant part in this film. Most of the characters are concerned with emotions and are defined by what emotions they are feeling. The surroundings of the film cause the characters to feel distress, joy, and acceptance. The next one, attribution theory. As stated previously, many of the decisions that are made are attributed to the acceptance of the need of both Kernan and Kincaid. Kernan's story is attributed to the need of needing his son's approval. He is seeking the approval of himself in his career and having to be measured against his wife. Kincaid reacts in the film with also being a person who needs acceptance. In his boxing career, he longed for people to revel at his fighting talents. However, he is not a strong boxer to begin with. But what's interesting is he becomes a better boxer when he changes his name from Kincaid to Satterfield. They are both longing to be accepted, and both stories in the film attribute to this acceptance, and they're wanting the adoration of others, including their sons. Conflict. There's a lot of conflict in this film. The story itself is based around boxing, which is obviously a very conflicting sport. Kernan has significant conflicts with his boss, Again, he wants to write more. His boss doesn't like his writing, and they go around and around. Kincaid has conflict with people on the street. There's people who want to fight him just because he says he was a boxer, and he's a homeless man. So they end up beating him several times. Even Kincaid and Kernan themselves get into a boxing match when they both are feeling with the stress, and they're both feeling with the disappointment and the embarrassment of it. They end up fighting it out. So there's a lot of conflict in the film. So, in short, this is an exceptional film that shows the depth and intricacies of interpersonal relationship. The film is about men being deceitful to find and accept in their careers, and most of all, to find acceptance in their sons and in themselves. They make decisions that unknowingly hurt others, and they want to be dignified in the public status and they long for approval of their professions. Additionally, as fathers, they want nothing more than their son's adoration. The film makes a great statement about every father fearing the day when their son realizes that they aren't the Superman they claim to be. As a father, I know this to be true in my own life. Although I want my son to know that I am a normal person who is flawed and is in the need of Jesus, it is heartwarming to see how much my 3-year-old son right now currently adores me. I love that he looks for me when he needs help, and he knows that I am always there to be his support and the one he looks up to. I know these feelings may fade in time, but above all, I know that I will be the most happiest when he has his own growing relationship with the Lord. And this is one of the verses I want him to know. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. I want him to know that having friends is important, that taking care of other people, even though they may be opposite of you, is important. I want him to know that God will never fail him, and the relationship that they have will never be broken. I want him to continue much further and longer in a relationship with the Lord than I ever hoped he could. So the interpersonal relationships portrayed in this film are an insightful discovery, and I feel that the messaging on the film provides great reflection to my own personal relationships. I am made to reflect upon the relationship I have with my supervisors, my friends, those that I meet in passing, and above all, my own wife and children. This class as a whole has helped me to dwell upon the relationships that I've encountered over the last 8 weeks. I've concluded that I think relationships are important, and I am glad to have a further and deeper understanding of how relationships impact who we are and affect the world around us. So in conclusion, thank you for watching this lengthy presentation. Hope you enjoy and that you have a blessed and awesome remainder of the year. Thank you.